Hello, we are back after a short break, and this time we are back in English, which is good news for those who, who speak this language primarily instead of German. So we are moving on with a topic that refers to all of us, because there are times when we have clients and we feel really stressed out. How can we deal with these situations, right? There are tough conversations, challenging discussions. How to navigate all of this? The response, I would say, is pretty simple, but not that obvious. And also how to bring it into life is something that you can master if you approach this wisely. And this is why we have someone special today. This person is going to talk about strong, confident, successful, how physical training boosts resilience and strengthens your business. So yes, here we are. You have to invest in physical training because it will impact your business. So that is already a good beginning. She is the founder of Solid Defense. So she's totally into empowering people. Hopefully her energy today, I'm actually sure, is going to be contagious and all of us are going to leave the room wiser. Eva Rostock, welcome to the stage.
All right, hello everyone. I'm Eva, I'm 32, and I'm super excited to be here. Although I am shitty nervous, I'm trying to keep on smiling. So thank you. As Nadia lovely introduced me, I'm going to talk to you about how physical training boosts your resilience and positively impacts your business. So let's have a quick look what we're going to look at, from punching fear to pitching with power. Then we're going to look at resilience, fear, and humans as social creatures. Why your full inbox is worse than a saber-toothed tiger. Then we'll look at how to train the body and rewire the mind. And then some quick tools and final thoughts for you. So, before we dive right in, a quick question for you guys. Raise your hands, like who of you is having some kind of physical strength-related training implemented in their week? Oh, that's quite a lot. Okay, I'm surprised. Good. All right, then let's dive in. Let me tell you a little story. I have a client. Let's call her Elena for now. She started training with me about a year ago, I guess in June 2025. And she came in for the, you might say, typical reasons to join a self-defense class. She had recently experienced a domestic violence situation and wanted to feel more like herself again, stronger and overall more safe. Professionally, she is a sales rep. Sales rep in an IT-related, still very male-dominated field. And what happened? She started training with us in June, and about end of September, start of October, she came up to me and said, like, "Hi, Eve, you know what's very funny? I feel more safe now. I feel more like myself again. But what strikes me is that she suddenly felt more confident in having arguments with her colleagues, in having salary discussions with her manager. She suddenly sold better and bigger deals to clients." And that started when she started training with us. So I thought there might be some correlation that I need to explore a little more. So you see, I'm struggling with my notes, but got it. What I observed is that the way she learned to stand her ground in training after only 3 months, physically, vocally, mentally, that started to show up in how she handled business conversations. And what is amazing is that I see this happening over and over and over and over again with different people. It doesn't matter if it's a woman or a man, in different fields of profession and with different social backgrounds. So, especially as a freelancer, you are not just selling a skill. You're not just selling a product that you came up with. You're not just selling a service. You are always selling yourself first because you are the one standing in front of your client selling the service. And therefore, you constantly face uncertainty. You face high-pressure situations, negotiations, and you don't have a team to fall back on. You're totally on your own. So the key question is, how do you stay strong, centered, and confident in those little moments that matter? And therefore, we need to look at 3 things, which is resilience, fear, and humans as social creatures. Let's start with resilience. Resilience is the psychological capacity to adapt to stress, setbacks, and change without being overwhelmed. There's a nice quote by Rivich and Chatay from 2002. Resilience is not a fixed trait. It's a set of skills, behaviors, thoughts, and actions that anyone can learn and develop. And I think that's a pretty good thing, because that means if you feel like you're not there yet, you're not as resilient as you could be, you can learn that with the right tools. Anyone can learn that. Usually when we look at resilience, resilience is displayed with 7 core skills or 7 pillars, how people say it. Let's go through them real quick. So on pillar 1, we have emotion regulation. It's your ability to process strong emotions without just bursting out. Then we have impulse control, which is the ability to think before acting or speaking, which might come in handy if you have a really shitty client who's being rude to you. Then we have optimism, the belief that things can turn out in a good way for you. On pillar 4, we have causal analysis. That's the ability to find the root cause of your problem, and that also prevents you from just blaming others for your own failures. Then we have empathy on 5, which is being able to set yourself in another person's shoes or take their perspective, which also is super important when we talk to clients, right? Because we need to understand what the client wants and needs and where the pain is, to actually then make that pain go away. On pillar 6, we have self-efficacy. It's a little hard word for the German speakers in here. It's Selbstwirksamkeit. That might be more familiar. That is the belief that you can solve your problems. The innate belief that you have the ability to solve that problem with a positive outcome. And last but not least, we have goal orientation, which is simply that you take action to find the right network, to take on new challenges. And that is simply why you are all here, right? You're putting yourself out there and networking, talking to people that you've never talked to before, listening to new speakers, and finding new things that can help you. So, what resilience does to our body from a neuroscientific perspective, it activates rational thinking over our amygdala, which is in the back of our brain, and that is responsible for emotional thinking. That simply helps you recover faster from tough feedback. That helps you stay motivated when projects are stalling. And it helps you keep showing up, although things get tough. Let's move on to the next 2 that kind of belong together. And that is fear and humans as social creatures. If we sell our services, if we sell ourselves as freelancers, we are usually confronted with some sort of fear, even though we might not perceive it or see it as fear in the first place. Fear is simply an evolutionary hardwired mechanism in us that keeps us safe, which is a good thing, which is why we as humans, as a species, survived. But by now, threats changed. What started out as purely physical threats is now more of a psychological and social nature. So we usually do not stumble upon a saber-toothed tiger on the next bus stop in Berlin, but maybe we have some different client conversations coming up. Maybe we have a project that we want to be prolonged, where we're really going to have to negotiate, maybe with someone who is not that convinced that we do good work. And there are usually 3 components that we look at when we talk about fear in humans, because fear is something very abstract, very negative, something that we do not want to look at too close because it's not comfortable. So we have, usually, humans are afraid of the unknown. Humans are afraid of failure and incompetence. And humans are afraid of rejection and embarrassment. Let's look at the unknown. Again, from a neuroscientific perspective, our brain simply is a prediction machine. And as soon as we cannot predict, our amygdala becomes hyperactive, which is causing stress. And actually, uncertainty, so not knowing what's going to happen, is way worse for our nervous system than knowing that something bad is going to happen. And for us freelancers, this is kind of basic daily doing, right? You constantly ask yourself, will I land this project? Will the new client like the way I work? Or will the client refer me to my next potential customers? Where does my next paycheck come from? These all factor in the category of the unknown. Let's move on to failure and incompetence. This is simply our fear of being unable to perform when it matters. So you show up, you need to deliver, and somehow you fail to do that. And this is where something comes in that is called imposter syndrome. And I'm somehow pretty sure that a lot of people in this room know exactly what imposter syndrome feels like. It is you being uncertain, or you not seeing yourself as competent as others think you are. So you're afraid that your client will just find out that you're a fraud and that you have nothing that you can deliver, which usually is bullshit. But that's what imposter syndrome is, right? And imposter syndrome, this feeling or this fear of not being good enough, keeps us from showing up in the best way we can. So we start holding back. We start to be like, I don't know if I can do that. And again, we as freelancers, we constantly perform. We constantly pitch, we constantly network, we constantly deliver without some sort of team to buffer our mistakes or to fall back on or to simply give us a clap on the back saying, good job, you did that really good. And then we move on to the last one, rejection and embarrassment. We as humans, and this is where this notion of humans as social creatures comes in, we are wired for human connection. We want to be part of a group, if we like it, or if we like to admit it or not. And we do not want to stand out negatively in any way. This fear of exclusion is so deeply in our genes that we cannot even, if we want so bad, do anything against that. So again, as freelancers, think of putting yourself out there, think of approaching people here, or just posting something on LinkedIn. We are constantly opening up space for potential judgment. And that might trigger avoidance in a lot of people that think like, I can post that, maybe I get bad feedback, and they just don't post. But that's the wrong way to deal with it. So this constant social evaluation that we go through keeps us in performance mode. And that makes us stay in overdrive, in constant stressful overdrive. We have high cortisol levels. Our sleep suffers. Our digestion is bad. Our focus suffers. And all those things just because we do not want to be embarrassed. And I feel like sometimes this is seen as just a beginner problem or something that mostly relates to IT-related freelance jobs. But this applies to every one of us who puts themselves out there. Like, just take me, for instance, right now. I'm used to talking to people 6 days a week, but in my training class. So being at a conference, just simply speaking, this is the first time for me, so this is very unknown. And then I totally want you guys to like me. I want you to get my point. I don't want to look like an idiot. And I want my partner in the audience to be like, yay, go girl. And this is simply factoring all that. But I can tell you a good baseline of resilience keeps you showing up and it keeps you in delivery mode without being too stressful. So, now we have looked at a psychological basis. Let's move on to the body. Or not. Please, next. I can do a little dance meanwhile, or I can just continue. Okay, for a very long time, mind and body have been perceived as, that's not the slide, but almost there. Body and mind have been perceived as two very separate entities. This has been disapproved by a very long time by now, but now I really need my slide. Because I have little tigers for you. Getting there. Take your time, guys. No worries. I'm not nervous at all. Okay, I will try my best to give you the info without the picture. The reaction or the correlation between body and mind starts in the brain. I'm a big fan of the KISS principle, so yay! Our body is our stress regulator, and still the reaction that we're going to look at starts in the brain. So, to make it as short and as simple as possible, we have a perceived threat. Our little cute tiger here. That threat can be external or internal. Like external might be something like back in the days, the tiger, or today, a very fast car coming towards you. Something external. Internal can be stuff that we face every day. Shitty client, hard negotiation coming up, stuff like that. So, the threat is registered by our amygdala. Again, emotions, threats, fear in our brain. The amygdala then sends a signal to our hypothalamus, which is responsible for our blood pressure, apart from other stuff. And the hypothalamus then sets off the fight or flight response, which is the survival mode in our body, by pushing in two hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. Adrenaline gives you a very sharp, immediate response with an elevated heart rate, with having cold sweat, with heavy breathing. Cortisol, on the other hand, is more of a long-term effect, with, which keeps your immune system suppressed and keeps you in overdrive. So what that does is our nervous system switches from the parasympathetic state, which is our rest and digest, food coma, sleeping mode, to the sympathetic state, which is fight or flight or survival mode. So if you now ask yourself, like, yeah, why is your full inbox worse than the saber-toothed tiger? The tiger gives you exactly two options. Fight or flight. So you either run away or you're practically dead. Tiger problem solved. Your inbox, on the other hand, even if you get all emails done for today, you know it will be there tomorrow morning. Maybe you're already waiting for a client to respond to something that you handed in yesterday. Maybe you ask yourself, why does it take so long for him to respond? You see, like this keeps us in overdrive. The tiger is there or gone, but the inbox is there all the time. And that is why it's also so hard for us to switch into parasympathetic state throughout our day. Alrighty, there are 3 emotions that usually show you pretty fast where emotions are stored in our body. Like you can almost feel the emotions in different regions of your body. Just think about anxiety, anger, or fear. When you're anxious, you will probably have jittery limbs or a shaky voice, or your chest feels tight. Or if you're angry, your fists and your jaw clench and your shoulders feel tense. And with shame, it's very extreme. Think of a collapsed posture when you're really embarrassed, or your downcast eyes. So if you're just a little aware of your body, it will show you exactly where the emotions are stored in your body. And that might be very different for different kinds of people. If you want to read a little bit more into this, which I really recommend, I recommend The Body Keeps a Score by Bessel van der Kolk. It's one of the most read books in this area, and it deals with how emotions are stored in the body as somatic patterns, like I just mentioned with anxiety and anger. Alrighty, we have the psychological basis. We have looked at how this reflects in our body. Now we come to my field of expertise, how this transfers to training. So, as Nadia lovely introduced, I am the head coach of a self-defense school. So, when I think of self-defense, I think about one thing mainly, and this is stress management. Which means we usually look at things like observing and evaluating potentially dangerous situations, or being approached by an agitated or aggressive person. We have stuff like de-escalation, we have flight tactics, and we have actual physical defending skills. So what comes in now is that additional to fight and flight, we have people coming in that are extremely afraid of the freeze mode. Freeze means, think of the deer in the headlights. The train is coming up and the deer won't move. So freeze is you being unable to move, react, respond to the threat in front of you. How does that happen? It simply is your brain or your amygdala not having any kind of answer to the threat in front of you. So you have a stimulus that is totally unknown to you, and your brain does not know how to answer to that. That's when a freeze happens. So in a professional context, this could just mean a mental blackout. You have a different conversation, and you are suddenly no longer able to respond or express yourself in the way that you actually plan to do. So, for example, imagine, as you all sit here, imagine being strangled to a wall, or imagine being tackled and slammed down to the floor. I'm pretty sure in this part of society that very few of you have experienced this situation. So you would probably experience a freeze moment. Maybe not very long, but for a short moment you will freeze because your brain goes like, what the fuck? I haven't seen this before, no idea how to deal with that. So, what we do is teach our brain that there is an answer. And how can we do that? we need to expose it to the stimulus, which in our training case means verbal escalation, hitting, kicking, strangling, takedowns, hold-ups, you name it. Might sound scary. It's actually really fun and I can really recommend it. But yeah. So we need to give our brain the stimulus bit by bit, enabling it to respond again on its own. And what is important, this is not a, yeah, I'll do it once and succeed and then it's good thing. But this happens over time. We cannot create this response to the specific stimulus by one training. We need to expose our brain over a longer period of time to create a solid answer. I came up with a little scheme when I thought about, like, what is it that I'm doing in training? And usually I give people 3 things. I give them a set of tools and skills. I give them a very specific intensity and stress level. And then failure comes in. So let's take the example of the strangulation and put that very specifically into a training context. So strangling, someone in front of you putting their hands around your neck, pushing and throwing you into a wall. It's actually much more nicer than it sounds, but in a training situation, I will very likely give you tools up front. So, for instance, when we imagine this strangulation situation, so we will approach slowly the extreme close quarter. We will deal with the restriction of the blood flow and of the airflow. We will deal with clearing our neck from the hands in front of us, and we will fight back in this close range that we established before. And then we start strangling. And that's when the fun part begins, in a low intensity. So I give you 4 tools up front, then we start strangling, super slow, but your brain will most likely connect the dots, and you will defend the strangulation. Even though it's not hard, but your brain will see, oh, now it makes sense what she just gave me. That, okay, all right, I got this. And then session by session, we will increase the intensity and the stress level. Means making the attack faster, making the attack harder. Maybe factor in something like adrenaline, or a bad lighting, or make it super loud around you, or factor in multiple attackers, or yada, yada, yada. We make it harder and harder to a point where the threat of the strangulation almost feels real. And that is where your brain learns the most, when the threat almost feels real. And then I push you to the point where I almost force you to fail at some point. And that's where the learning begins. You need to fail. And I know you've heard this before at least once today, that you need to fail and that you need to fail often. But failing is not fun, and it doesn't have to be. But it's important to learn the process of pushing through that failure. Because you will fail, and your brain goes like, okay, that's very uncomfortable, but I did it before with a lower intensity, but I did it before. So probably there's not going to be a freeze, but we will try it again and again in the same intensity where you just failed until it works again in this intensity. And that's when you start to realize, okay, this is just something I need to push through. This is not a life or death situation. I can handle this and I can push through that. So what we do again is just giving our brain a positive answer to a stress or a threat, increase the difficulty, force you to fail, and then guide you to pushing through that failure. Again, this is not a do once and succeed thing. This is very important to me. And it's also not just about failing and failing and failing often and failing early, but this is adapting to increasing adversity. And this is what you do with your clients as well, right? I mean, you don't start as a freelancer tomorrow, go up to the manager of ENBW the next day and expect to deliver a huge 5 million project, right? So look for the tools, increase intensity, and push through the failure. For everyone who's not that much into self-defense, maybe just put that into the context of strength training as well. Strength training is not a threat in the sense like strangulation, but it still puts a lot of stress on our body and our brain. So again, let's go through those 3. I will probably give you essentials like a warm-up, a mobility scheme, the basic patterns of movement, how to do a bench press or a squat or a deadlift. And then you do your first scary repetition with a light weight. And you will manage. And your body goes like, yeah, that doesn't feel that shitty. Positive answer to stress. Then you increase the weight session by session until, you already know it, you fail. And then you will try again and again at the same intensity, at the same weight, until you manage and lift that weight. And then you move on. So the nice thing about these kinds of training schemes is when you succeed, when you lift the weight, when you defend the strangulation, your body will push so many happiness hormones through your body that you might actually start liking that. And it feels good, and you take on the next challenge, and the next challenge, and the next bigger attacker, and you will like, yeah, give me more adrenaline, put the lights out. And this is really starting to be fun. And this is where it gets easier. So this is not about the result. It's actually about pushing through. The way is the goal. You say that? It's not about the getting there. It's about the journey. Okay, so yeah, I can handle this. This is what I want to teach people who either engage in fitness training or in self-defense. It's not, I'm the biggest, baddest person in the room who can punch all of you. It's just about, I can handle what comes at me. No matter if it's a threat or a difficult client or whatever you can think of. It's just to give you an internal sense of, I can handle this. And your body and your brain will remember the steps you went through in training and simply apply the pattern to any other situation. That's the nice thing. And that's why I think that physical training is so much more important than a lot of other trainings when you're a freelancer. All right. So, this is a lot of information, I know, and this is more of a mid to long-term thing. So I want to give you a couple of quick tools that you can take away right away. And there are 4. Breath regulation. The easiest way you can connect to your body and calm your nervous system is a breath regulation exercise. For instance, long, mindful out-breaths. Imagine coming home after a hard day, you drop down on the couch and you go like, you don't go like, your body knows how to do that. You just need to apply it a little bit more often. So especially like breathing in 4 times in, 8 counts out. And doing that a couple of times will instantly calm your nervous system. Or some of you might have heard of that, box breathing. So if you know there's a stressful situation coming right up, imagine like just a box. You go 4 breaths in, hold for 4 seconds, 4 seconds out breath, hold 4 seconds. Do that a couple of times, it will have the same effect as the long out breath. It just puts you from the parasympathetic state, from the sympathetic state to a parasympathetic state. Tip number 2, connect to your body. Before the stressful situation, pick something you like to connect. For someone, that might be doing 10 push-ups. For somebody else, that might be doing 10 squats. But it can also be just put your headphones on, turn your favorite song on, and just move smoothly to the music. Something that you can feel your body. Point number 3, IT shrimps. Fix your posture. Sit upright. Not because it looks better on the camera. Nice to be having people going right up. But also because it clears your neck and makes your voice come out clearer when you talk to a client. And number 4, start with a weekly confidence session. It doesn't have to be like, oh yeah, now I'm starting and trying to run half a marathon in 4 weeks. It doesn't have to be that. But pick something like a gym, like a self-defense class, or whatever floats your boat, and start with a weekly session. Even if it's just 30 minutes, you will feel the effects pretty soon, and sooner than you expect. And some final thoughts. Don't overthink it. This is not your next big self-improvement, I'm going to be the best version of myself thing. No, it's just about connecting to the body. Start. Move. Touch some grass instead of a keyboard, guys. It can really help if you just go out on a walk, soak in some sun, take off your shoes, touch some grass. People always laugh about this, but it's true. I mean, my partner has done this a couple of times at home when he's super stressed, going out into our garden, taking off the shoes and just walking through grass. It helps. Second, and this is very, very helpful, find a coach or find a training buddy or a training group. Because if you have an accountability partner, it's so much harder to quit or find excuses if you're not alone. If somebody's like, hey, let's go, and you're like, I don't want to stay on the couch, that's a super shitty feeling, right? Then you get your ass up and go with your partner to training. And on a very well-intentioned, very personal note, focus on how you feel in your body. If you're here because you're seeking support, you've been struggling with starting your business, maybe you have already got some mentoring, some skill training, maybe you've even booked a sales coach, that's all great. But if you're still struggling, don't get another sales coach because that's not gonna fucking fix your problem. It lies deeper. Connect to your body. You can put the sales and the skill and the mentoring stuff all behind that, but if you don't feel good in your body and if you don't feel yourself, your customer will not believe a word you say. So focus on how you feel in your body, then sell. It's of course good to find a coach in terms of a self-defense coach or a gym coach or a personal trainer or whatever, but if it's not going to be your 4th sales coach being the game changer. Confidence is not just about a mindset. Confidence is muscle memory. Train your body, move your body, and your confidence will easily follow. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Eva. Don't go away, because first of all, I want to comment on that, and I want to say it's true, and I'll tell you why. Not to jump into the picture, but I've been for years this person who was always like, no, I don't have time for this, I have too much work, I'm not going to walk on the grass, I won't leave the place where I'm working, no chance, this is all nonsense, no one can see what I'm doing anyway, I need to deliver. And that obviously results in a serious mental breakdown. So I know what I'm talking about, so don't be me a few years ago. And one thing that I really want to stress that you said, I think it's not about saying, oh, I'll do it once. You sit down, you breathe in and out, it's not working. No. It's probably a habit, right? It's something that you have to be very consistent, right? You have to be consistent, persistent. So you have to have this resilience, right? And then,
Absolutely.
right? And then after some time, you will see the results. And also, like you mentioned, I love that with the external sales coach, because we tend to look for solutions outside instead of inside, because inside is very difficult, right? Outside, it's number one, always easier to blame someone or to do the heavy, or ask someone else to do the heavy lifting. But no one's going to do the homework for us. That was just my few cents, but I hope that you agree.
Absolutely. And don't get me wrong, there's awesome sales coaches out there. They're really valuable. It's just not always the one thing that will
Exactly.
get you up there.
It's the sales coach, let them inspire you, perfect. But the heavy lifting you have to do. No one's going to do it for you. Now, questions. Who has questions or who wants to comment on that or maybe share their journey and say, yes, it's worked for me, or you're so inspired that you want to try? At least who wants to sign up and start going to the gym after this speech? Oh, that's a good beginning. No, seriously. Any other questions? Please go ahead.
Completely agree. I love the e-shrimp. One thing that I've discovered, so I learned that I joined 4 gyms. I went 2 weeks and the rest I just paid for. And I found there's virtual personal trainers.
Absolutely.
And I have that, and we've been doing this for the last 2.5 years. And his only job is to make sure that I show up in the morning, that it's 3 times a week. It's $20 an hour. That's worth my health and my health insurance. So I pay for that myself. But go find modern solutions to possible problems. And if you notice, I don't get up in the morning, find something to keep your ass. Get up and do the stuff you have to do. Find community, friends.
Absolutely valid suggestion. I did that myself. The only thing what I experience is different when you do it in person. And this is talking about me having a personal trainer. You see the difference in like your threshold. You can better adjust with the person and pushing a little bit harder when you're doing that in person. But totally valid option to do it online, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that in general, when someone's waiting for you, you feel bad to let them down. I also know what I'm talking about. 5 years ago, I signed up for the gym. And then 5 months later, I'm getting a phone call if I'm all right. And I'm like, why are you asking? We haven't seen you for 5 months. Well, that's when I started having a personal trainer. So, all right. Anyone else? Any questions? Well, please.
Maybe you can explain it also on a neural level. But I learned already some years ago if I'm mentally stressed, so I'm working in IT and the customers are annoying all the time, you know it. And if you go to the gym, you're less stressed. It takes 15, maybe 20 minutes, and then the mental stress is like completely gone. So you have to push yourself to go there to reduce the mental stress.
Absolutely. And what I find maybe even more important than going is engaging in some sort of activity that demands your attention. Because if I personally just go on a treadmill and just run, my brain goes on and on and on and on and on because I don't have to focus on running. But if I engage in something where I really have to focus, if I do really heavy deadlifting, I need to focus on my body so I don't fuck up my back. And then I cannot think about work. So that's a factor that I always like to put in there, not just going, but focusing on something completely different that totally takes off your mind.
That's very helpful. Please, go ahead. So the feedback is, thank you for not pitching, okay?
I didn't want to pitch perfect.
But because of the fact that you didn't do it and you're so genuine, but that's my comment, right? So genuine, that's what I'm saying. The question is, what are your services? How do you work with people? How do you work with individuals based on everything that you've said?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the feedback because I didn't want to pitch. I run my school, unfortunately, it is in Heidelberg. So we train 6 days a week with everyone who wants to join. We also do special workshop days or weekends, especially for people who have a longer way to travel to us. But I'm always open to A, try to help remotely on a personal level, and B, if you find a group wherever you're coming from, and you find a group of a couple of people, I will travel. No brainer, I will do that. So just connect with me.
Perfect. All right, I will connect with you. Hopefully all of you will, because you're not just on LinkedIn. You can literally just check on LinkedIn or go through the event website, and that's where you'll find Eva. And also, you can feel free to run up to her and scan the QR code or just have a chat with this inspiring human being. Thank you so much for all the added value today.
Thank you, guys.